For some reason, I was thinking they were way behind us. I mean, besides the whole day thing.
Hello. Okay. Can I mute myself? Hi, good morning.
That's not
I can't hear her. It's 5 a.m., not even 5 a.m. in Fiji, guys.
They're in Fiji?
Yes.
What? I think you were just a while. Guys, make sure you ask them what kind of sandwich we like. That's a good question.
Yes.
You know what? I'm going to step out for a second because I'm going to tell how everybody else goes up.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some good questions. Question for you, Power Photos. What kind of samples are you taking? Question to you.
Yes.
How long have you guys been out at sea? What else do I got?
What are they exploring?
How long do you have to drive at one particular ship? You know, how long are you on there? Do you get back to breaks? That's Ask them how much money they make. That's yours, Lazarus.
I always ask that.
Do you guys all have a question? You remember it?
What was their major in college?
Kevin saying it. What do you want to know? Mine is
Did you say tennis?
chemist.
Yeah. Actually, chemistry's not too bad.
Yeah.
Math part is, otherwise it's just like cooking. Yeah.
I'm gonna be the next Tony Stark.
Yeah, you should. Just remember us when you're rich.
Yeah, lost those Captain America. Captain America,
You're about to brawl.
Civil War. Vinny's the Hulk.
He's already turning green.
It's hot.
Not the flatwood. Did you guys hear what Jill was saying about the team that got invited to the White House?
Yeah. Me.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. I coached them.
Yeah.
Just for
The White House puts on a science fair every year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we should watch it class. We have like some live footage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we muted again?
Yeah, maybe they don't.
So the Schmidt, you probably know that Schmidt Oceans
Oh.
Wendy, yeah, Wendy and Eric Schmidt, who created Google. Wendy
Hi,
Schmidt.
everybody.
Hey.
Well,
Hi, you guys are not muted, and we're going to get started in about 8 minutes, just so you know.
Okay. Should we mute ourselves while I give them a preview?
Yeah, that would be great.
Thanks.
Say like, good morning, Carly.
Good morning. Testing sound.
Good morning. Good morning, Carly. Can you hear me?
I can. There's a little bit of an echo.
Yeah, it's same here.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll try and proceed us forward.
Jill, you can talk to her to test the audio.
Hey, Carly, we're here. Can you hear us?
Yep, we can hear you great. No echo there.
Yeah, I can hear some people better than others. I'm not sure who I'm talking to.
Okay.
So, probably going to give you.
We're moving.
Okay.
No, I
So
think
anyway,
it's better. That's better up there,
Everyone
Chris.
knows we're ready on the calculator.
Great, we can hear you perfectly now. Thank you. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We are going to get started here. Thank you, everybody, for those of you that are joining us live. I'm really looking forward to the next 30 minutes and having a wonderful conversation with the scientists aboard RV Falkor and to talk with some of the students through MATE ROV. Anybody who has questions throughout the call this morning through the Hangout, feel free to tweet any questions for those of you that are watching. We'll be happy to answer them throughout the morning. We'll start with our team on Falkor. As you can see, they're on the aft deck right now with ROV ROPOS. And we're going to start with John, who is coming into us live on their way to some hydrothermal vents. They left Fiji yesterday and are heading towards the La'au Basin. John is the electrical engineer for the ROPOS system. John, welcome to our call this morning and our Hangout. Tell us where you are and what you're standing in front
of. Thanks for having me. We're on the RV Falkor, and like you said, we just left Fiji the other day on our way to some hydrothermal vents and volcanoes and some snails and all good science stuff that I don't know a whole lot about. So I'm standing in front of ROPOS, which is a remotely operated platform for ocean science. This is our baby. It's the science workhorse class ROV, 40 horsepower motor, few manipulators. Basically just citing off the website for you here, but it's got few HD cameras, 1080i video, 6 standard definition cameras. We had over 3,700 watts of lights, HID, LEDs, and we basically have our vehicle centered and very specifically for science. So you can see on the sides and the front, maybe you can't see that well, but we have swing out arms for sample boxes. We have up above us, we have water samplers, much similar to a CTD off a cast off the side of a boat. We have suction samplers for sucking up live animals, bring up to the surface. Specifically for this dive, we have some specific 3D cameras that will take digital stills of the subsea, the floor, and then make a 3D image as best they can with 2 cameras. Yeah, so we have 2 or 3 modes. We have a shallow mode and a mid-depth mode. Our shallow mode is 1 kilometer possible. Our mid-depth is 3,000 meters. And we do have a deep sea mode, so the sub is capable of going 5 kilometers under the water, but it requires a separate large winch and kind of a top hat, Medea type system, where from that you would have a small tether. I don't know if there's any questions so far.
Can you tell us how you collect samples with the ROV?
I can. We can collect water samples through something like this. So as you can see, it's just rigged up with a lot of colorful electrical tape. On something like this, you will have a temperature sensor and a water sample sensor This one in particular is not my specialty, but it has a pH sensor and something called an EH sensor, so I don't know what that one's actually collecting. I apologize. Over here, we'll have like a, this one is specifically sucking up water. You can see all the wands and all the things are rigged so that in a holster system they get returned back to the sub safely and don't get caught up anywhere else in the sub. That's one of the biggest problems that you can have, is how to rig things up properly so that they don't interfere with the rest of the dive. So it can take you up to an hour to reach the sea bottom. So if anything should happen to the sub, you obviously have to recover, or you don't get the science that you want done for the scientists. With the manipulators, we often just use a feed scoop or a aluminum shovel or something like that. These are force feedback manipulators, so that we can actually collect coral, some live animals, and things like tube worms on top of sea vents. With a soft grip, you can tend to just rip them off of the seafloor. And then they go into something like this over here, which is a bio box. So it's a box that will contain the water the whole way up to the surface, and then the scientists can actually collect the water and the specimens.
And how do you launch and recover ROPOS?
With the system that we have here, we have a armored tether, which contains our power and our fiber optics. So there's 5 fibers and 5 powers. We run 3,000 volts at 3-phase for the motor, and a single phase for the hotel power. So that's for the lights, etc. So the cable, in our standard operation, we have a launch and recovery crane. So the tether goes all the way from the winch through the crane to the top of the sub on a bullet, and all the weight is held by the bullet. So the sub's actually capable of actually lifting up 4,000 pounds through a through frame lift system that we have. That's not happening on this sub, on this trip, because we're just doing science. We also have a synthetic umbilical that's free-floating as well, which is for smaller boats, and that's what I mentioned was the shallow system.
Excellent. And it's morning time here on the west coast of the United States. It looks pretty dark over there. Where are you in the world, and what time is it, and what are you guys doing right now on Falkor?
It's 5 a.m. Like I said, we're heading out. We're in the middle of nowhere in the tropics, so it's very warm. It's the weather is very unpredictable. It could be raining as hard as you've ever seen it, and it can be hot and sunny the next minute. So the temperature doesn't change much through the night, and the water's nice and blue when you wake up in the morning. So pretty cool.
Excellent. And before we move on to the science, I want to go back to the team, the MATE ROV team, and see if anybody has questions over there.
Well, how much time have you guys been at sea?
How much time do we spend throughout the whole year? We spend about 3 to 4 months in 1 month chunks. Is basically how our operation works. So a benefit of being an ROV person, obviously, is that you spend equal amount of time at home with pay. Like, so every day offshore, I get a day on the beach with pay. I could take off with my family, so I'm with them quite a lot. We run in 4-man teams, so 3 pilots, 1 navigator. We'll show you their stations inside when we go to the RV control room. And we run in 24-hour ops, so noon to midnight, midnight to noon. So I think we're going to start talking about science now.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll talk to you guys in a minute.
And as Charisse is getting her microphone all set up there, can you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Charisse, for taking some time to do this. Charisse is not only a scientist, but doing a lot of the outreach on our research expedition on our month-long trip, and she's going to talk a little bit about the science that they're going to be doing on board.
Right. Well, thanks for the introduction, Carly. So I'm one of the scientists that will be using ROPOS to perform research down at the bottom of the ocean at these hydrothermal vents in Lao Basin. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my research, and I'm going to try to talk a lot about what other people are doing because it's really, really interesting. We've got lots of scientists on board. So I know John showed you the vehicle. I'm just going to point out what instruments we're using for the specific research I'm talking about. So let's start at the really large scale. We have multi-beam mapping going on this expedition. You can't see it from where you are, but the multi-beam is underneath the sub. We have a lot of hidden instruments within the sub. So right down at the bottom, we have this multi-beam bathymetry sonar, an M3, and the submersible is going to fly over the seafloor, and it's going to map it at a large scale. We're going to map, on the meters to kilometers scale, but we're going to do it at such a fine resolution, and that's because the sonar is on the submersible. Usually, sonars are ship-based, and so you're further away from the seafloor, so you get that lower resolution. But because we're going to take it right down to the seafloor, we're going to be able to detect very small items. And the research that is going to be used for is to detect changes in the bathymetry caused by volcanic and tectonic activity. So that's one research project. And I'm going to move over to my research project, and that's using imagery. So I use this camera here, nicknamed the Beast Cam because of how large it is. And I use two cameras on the side here. So all of these are still cameras, so we're just taking photographs. With the Beast Cam, we take really high resolution photographs of the vent structures. And we can detect and identify things like shrimps, snails, mussels, and we can map where those are using these photographs. And then using these two adjacent cameras here that are stereo cameras, we're going to be able to map out the seafloor at this fine resolution, but in 3 dimensions. So now we have where the animals are, we have what the seafloor bathymetry is like at that fine scale, and then we're going to couple that with things like the chemical sensors and the temperature probes, and we're going to map out that geochemical area, that environment around where we've mapped with the imagery. And that's going to give us a complete story on where animals at these vent systems live, how they interact with each other. And so that's the part that I'm leading up and that I'm really excited about. So Carly, I'm just going to check in with you. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yeah, you're doing great. This is fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to the bio box. I know John introduced that. So we have one bio box up top here, and then we have a couple bio boxes that swing out on the arms. And what those are going to be used to do is to collect living specimens from the seafloor. So we're going to grab those snails, we're going to grab the mussels, and we're going to bring them back up to the surface. And we have this amazing mobile lab that's on board the Falkor right now. And that came out from the Harvard University with a bunch of scientists. And what they're going to do is keep these animals alive on the ship. And they're going to run through experiments. It's amazing how they keep the animals alive on the ship because that environment down at the hydrothermal vents, very extreme. So you have immense pressures, you have huge fluctuations in temperature, and it's just such a chemically rich environment. So they have a lab on board where they simulate that. And in these containers, they're mixing up the water, mixing up the chemistry, running through, and then compressing it and putting the animals in there so that they feel at home and that we can then research them, look at them in, in real life, but while they're comfortable in the conditions that they usually live in.
Therese, we have a question here. What kind of animals will you be looking at, and are you excited to see anything in particular?
Right, so I get to look at everything that lives on the seafloor. Mine is a community study, whereas a lot of other scientists on the ship are going to focus on 1 or 2 species. With the photographs, we get to see everything that lives down there, and then we're interested in all of them. Specifically, though, there's a couple foundation species that I'm really interested to map out, and that's because a foundation species affects all the other species in the vicinity. That means that they kind of set the standard of life down there. And we have foundation species down there that are snails and that are mussels. And basically what they are they're symbiotic hosts. So there's microbes that live in these species that provide all the energy for the rest of the food web down there. And so it'll be great to see them. It'll be great to map where they are, because they'll really give us insight to what the rest of the community is doing. So, sorry, that's the snails, the mussels, those guys in particular.
Excellent, thank you.
So I'm just going to check now. We have Jonathan. In fact, actually, we probably have time for one more question if there is one, and then we're going to go into the control room with Jonathan. He's going to show us how we control the sub from in there. But if there's one more question.
Sure, let's turn it over to the ROV team again. You guys have any questions about the biology or what they're going to be doing on board?
Hey, Carly, real quick, this is Jill Zandy. Good to see you. Thank you, everybody, for getting up early. I know it's early over there, but I just want to say we have a small group here, but this is a team from North Monterey County High School. It's their first year competing, middle school, sorry, and first year competing in the main competition. And so one of the tasks they have to do is to pick up coral. So they were really paying attention to that arm and how John was describing that corals are picked up. So thank you.
Thanks for joining us this morning. We're so happy to have you guys here. Therese, do you have any experience collecting coral when you're out in the field? Any advice for the team?
I have to admit, I take photographs of a lot of things because I want to leave the seafloor as I found it. That being said, Jonathan probably can't hear you right now, but remind him about that question, because he can show you about the arms, the arm controller in there, and how it has feedback. So they can do delicate things like picking up coral, having feedback in the control room about what the arms are doing. Just remind him to answer that question.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. So if you can see Jonathan, we'll go ahead and switch to the control room now.
We're just waiting until we get that feed. We don't see anybody yet.
Any more questions here?
There we go. Hi, Jonathan, again. So now we're in the control room of research vessel Falkor. This is where a lot of the action is going to happen, and I believe Jonathan's going to walk us through some of what they do in the control room. Jonathan, can you share with us a little bit about the control room and what you're doing?
He's still muted.
Can you hear us okay?
He's muted.
Oh. Okay. Why don't you tell us about the control room a little bit for those of us viewing?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Thanks. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, we're standing by ready to hear about the control room.
Yeah, okay. So this is where we do it. This is where the, we missed the joke, but this is where the magic happens, obviously. So we fly from the position. We usually have two pilots on, a pilot and a co-pilot. Pilot will sit here. Co-pilot's usually next to him and doing controls on touch screens or with when you're when the pilot's flying. So when you're flying, you're like basically doing biz, or you're in a very dangerous area that stuff to be. So we have touch screens, video controllers, monitors. Beside us, we'll have a chief scientist, and they're in charge of the dive. They may not be the chief scientist of the boat, but they'll be in charge of the dive at that point. We have our navigation on the screen, so it'll be a spatially corresponding where we have the boat, we'll have where the sub is. First, we'll have altimeters, depth sensors, all that feedback from the sub to give us all the information we can possibly get, where the sub is, and to kind of like realize where you are in the world. Just try and take a grasp of that as you're flying around vents. Usually it's really, you're not always flying around vents. You can be mowing the lawn, just like doing these sonar surveys where you're just cutting a pattern across the seafloor at 30 meters, so you're not seeing anything other than what you're flying on the screen there. So we're going to do a quick example of the arms. We'll move the cameras around so you can see it. For picking up corals, one good hint is not to always close your fingers too much. So you'll actually stop the manipulator and then actually just twist the coral off instead of squeezing it and trying to pick it up. And then the coral can actually just sit inside the arm if it's possible. I don't know what you guys are using. So we'll just light up an arm here. I'm not sure if the camera's still inside or not. I don't know if you can actually point to that screen as well. If you just show a bit of the subsidiary. Yeah.
There we go. We can see that now. The camera's moving around a bit, so it's hard to see what you guys are doing there. But we can see now you're moving the manipulator arm there on the screen.
Yeah. Okay. So we have two manipulators, and one's a little more sensitive than the other. So we tend to use the board arm for doing sensitive work. And like we said, it has force feedback. So actually, if you go over to Peter here, who's actually working the arm, actually see what we use to control the arm. And then that screen there is a good screen to see what he's doing. Our wrist can rotate 360 degrees and can do a continual spin. You can close the jaw, open the jaw. And if you're really good, you can lock the jaw in a certain location, like I said, to pick up a coral. And use it more like a spoon than as a hand.
Excellent. And John, we have a question here. How long did it take you to learn these skills before you could get very good at picking up delicate objects?
About 1,000 hours is probably like a really good, it's like being in a job for a year. It's like 1,000 hours of flying. Industry tends to want you to have 2,000 to 3,000 hours and log it in a logbook. I've gotten to a point where I've stopped logging it. They just accept that you're good enough. The manipulators can take anyone can get on the manipulator, and I can show them how to work it. Where the experience comes in is where you deal with something that's hard to do with, and you can deal with emergencies. So same with flying. Anyone can fly. It's really easy. Technically, you can just sit there and you can do autos, but then it takes thousands of hours to like not tangle the umbilical, not get tied up with other wires on subsea. Looking at the entire, we have like 20 monitors up here, and any one of them can show you something that's more dangerous than the other. You can go looking straight ahead, flying, and then all of a sudden your sub's not moving, and then you look back at some other cameras, and you've got your tether on a chimney, and you're tied up, and you're stuck for hours, or you've tangled yourself up in your own umbilical or your own tether. So it's probably one of the best jobs in the world, and it's one of the hardest as well. So there's some dangers as well offshore, but we run a pretty safe boat.
Excellent. And a question for Charisse just came in. What will you be looking for in terms of the videos and images you're collecting? How do you make notes of that, or how do you view what's happening in real time and use that for your images for your research?
Right. So on board the ship, I make mosaics with the imagery that we're piping up the cable. So I make these large maps, and then we use those in real time to decide where we're going to do smaller sampling. Now, what I actually use for the research is I go back to shore and I use a program called ArcGIS, and that lets me lay out the image of the seafloor that we've taken, and in very fine detail map out where everything is. And then I can ask that program spatial questions about where they are in relation to each other.
Great. And I believe they have a question over there. Our ROV.
I have a question for Jonathan, and I want to know how tall is the ROV?
That's just over head height. I remember the exact, I think it's 1.64 meters tall. Oh, it's more than that. I can find that. it's about
6 feet tall, so.
Tall.
I'm 6'2", about 7 feet tall.
7 feet tall.
Okay, Jonathan, this ROV team, this is Jill Sandy from the Mate Center. Thank you again for getting up so early for us. So this is an ROV team from North Monterey County Middle School. It's their first year competing. And today, during our full practice, it will be hour number 1 of stick time for them. So they got a long way to catch up with you.
This is the mate competition. These guys are playing. So what kind of ROVs are you going to build? ROVs?
Show them with your hand how big is yours. How big is it?
Okay, yeah.
Excellent. Well, we're coming up on a short of time here. We're just about done with our half an hour. Are there any final questions with the Mate folks over there before we wrap it up?
Raise your hand. Yeah. Go. Wait. Go ahead.
No.
How many people does it take to control the ROV?
Speak up.
I would say it again.
Can you say it one more time?
Louder. To hear. Speak to hear.
How many ROV pilots?
Did you get that question, John?
Oh, how many ROV pilots do we have?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question, actually, because we're a multitasking group that generally all 3 pilots on each shift can fly and use the manipulators. We all kind of have a specialty. Some of us are electrical. We tend to have an electrical and 2 mechanicals per shift, and a navigator who's also the tech, the IT tech. So basically we have, out of an 8-man crew, we have at least 6 people that can fly. With multiple amounts of hours, but usually you come up to speed quick, so if you have less hours, we get you flying the most. Especially when it's something not as interesting. So when it's interesting, we kind of kick them off and want to do the fun stuff. So once you get some seniority, you can stay on. You can tell them to go away. I want to fly this. And we do about 4-hour shifts of flying in a 12-hour shift. 4 hours flying is only our maximum before you get tired and make mistakes. That's a good question, though.
Well, I would like to thank our ROV mate group for joining us this morning. And thank you so much to you, John, and to Charisse, and to everybody on Falkor, our marine technicians, for helping this morning, and our ETO, everybody for helping. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be following on schmidtocean.org your adventures, watching some of the live ROV footage that will be coming out on our YouTube page, as well as all the blogs. So thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye. Good luck.
Bye.